Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon Podcast and another episode of Scouted. This time we are talking Mikel Merino. We're talking Mikel Merino because we've had a report in from Fabrizio Romano. Mikel Merino is on the list at Barcelona for sure. Arsenal have also been tracking him as he's considered a good market opportunity with 1 year left on his contract, while Mikel Arteta also follows Real Sociedad regularly. Let's see what happens. Obviously, Merino scored the winning goal for Spain to send them through against Germany. We just did an hour of clips, which you can, as always, check out for free from the link in the description. So if you want to see him with clips and we sort of talk about him and look at his, look at him sort of on the pitch in action, you can go check that out from the link in the description on Patreon for a free trial. But we're here to talk the deal, the tactics, the stats, as always. Hello, George.
Hello.
So Mikel Merino, or Moreno, as you keep calling him, interesting. It's an interesting one to me because this feels like a sort of, there was an interview with Mikel that came out, I think, from ESPN talking about it's about finding the right deals at the right times. This does feel like a sort of an opportunity-ish type summer, I think people keep saying, but I do think that's true. This feels like one of those where Merino is not the world's perfect player. I think we're going to get to the profile in a second. He's not the world's greatest midfielder, but what he might be is kind of what we need at a really good price, at a good age as a prime player that we don't necessarily have in our midfield. We have a load of 25-year-olds and a load of 30-year-olds and no one's sort of in between. He's just turned 28. But before we sort of get into all that, if people don't know Merino, can we get sort of strengths and weaknesses type thing? And we also had a couple of comparisons earlier. I think they're probably quite useful as well.
Yeah, I think Michael Carrick is one of the big ones that stand out to me personally, and he's a little bit of a cross between him as well as Fabian Ruiz, I would say, his Spanish partner, ironically, and a certain Rodri in terms of the type of profile of midfielder that he is. He is very much that type of player that has a brilliant understanding of tempo. Really understands when to speed up a game, when to slow down a game. Brilliant touch economy. So basically, essentially what that just means is, he doesn't waste touches. He's got a really good understanding of his limits in terms of his athletic limits, and he plays within it. He's got a really good understanding of space. He's got kind of a really good reception as well. Like he's this type of player in build up that he's really going to help you in build up. I mean, he's an outlet and he demands the ball. He's very brave in that aspect. And he is somebody that can take it under pressure, turn and play. And he does it quickly. One of the best things about Mikel Merino, just to annoy Alex, is that when he does receive the ball kind of in transitions, he makes the right decision. He doesn't hold on to it too much. One thing that you won't see with him in maybe a con list is he's not going to play the Hollywood pass. We were talking in the scouting. He is the perfect definition of a 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 player every day.
The Nacho Monreal of the midfield,
yes,
I think was what we
said. The
said.
Nacho Monreal of midfielders. He is jack of all, master of none, although very much a master in the aerial ability. That's probably a superpower. There really is nobody in almost world football that's got his level of success rate at in terms of his aerial duels. It really is kind of amazing. And he's not this hyper aggressive player. He's just very smart in his ability to judge the trajectory of the ball and how he's able to interpret that space and attack. Like, you're not going to find him be nasty or overtly aggressive and dominating. He is 6'2", so he's a big frame, long-legged kind of tackler. He goes and nips in and is able to kind of find the ball very cutely. I think it's a very cultured tackling technique. It's not overly aggressive. And I do think he does kind of lose his running power the longer it goes on as well. And so what you will see is in the first 15 yards, he's actually quite sharp despite being 6'2". He's actually quite a quick mover. He's actually a very fluid turner as well. That's why you get the Carrick about it. But if you're going to ask him to make bigger 20-yard sprints, there is a limitation. There is an athletic. He looks like he loses power running in those distances.
I actually wanted you to say the words Granit Xhaka earlier, because I think for me there's a kind of a maturity to his play similar to Granit Xhaka. He's not trying to be the star of the show. He's keeping it moving. He's keeping it ticking. His usage of his body, I think, is something we maybe haven't mentioned in terms of how he deals with duels and physical contact, but also curving his runs in build up to just sort of create a little bit of space, a little bit of a moment here, baiting the press. He's just a smart player who isn't gonna He's not going to go and whack one in from 40 yards or dribble through your whole defense or whatever, but he's a smart player and he's someone that is very, very consistent. I think I want to highlight on this the stamina thing. Yeah, it's not quite a parachute on the back. The problem is with this is like, we compare him to someone like a Declan Rice, right? And Declan
Yeah.
Rice is a freak of an athlete. He's not
Yeah.
Declan Rice, but he's not Jorginho. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
if you're looking for a freak athlete, that's not what he is, but he's also not, as limited as maybe someone like a Jorginho is. I think, maybe let's move forward to the stats because there's a lot there. Yeah, the aerial capacity, man, is like this guy is unbelievable, and I think we'll see that in the stats. But let's have a look at him on FP Ref. So these are his stats compared to other midfielders around Europe in the top 5 leagues. His goals, I would imagine, is mostly from the air. It's pretty crazy. So there's some good numbers in terms of XG and sort of sort of how he approaches goal. The progressive passes received numbers, George sort of mentioned it just before about how he receives in the pocket and he turns. I've been saying this on the pod. If you guys listen to the sort of the main pod for a while, you'll know that I've been saying I've been looking for this player who could receive actually probably on the left, because I think Martin can do it, but he prefers to drop out the block a little bit more. Someone who can receive on the left with back to play and turn and has the capacity to do that. I don't necessarily he's going to get the numbers that Sociedad that's going to boost him right up there, but I think what you are seeing is someone who can do that, who can receive in the pocket and turn. Just want to skip down to the passing numbers, which people have said is a concern. What I will say is, I think if you looked at him for Spain, those numbers will jump up. I think for Sociedad, he's not. I think probably the main passer in the midfield is a kind of a Zubimendi. He's more of a knitter, I would say personally. Is that fair to say?
The one thing I didn't say Xhaka is because he's a facilitation in the way that
Yeah.
Xhaka was. Xhaka was more ball dominant, and but it's weird because if you look at his passing technique, we kind of mentioned earlier in the scouting, the 10 to 15 yard pass is his bread and butter. He gets it, he gets rid of it, and he doesn't want it because he knows he's not got it. So in terms of making the right decisions, that's where you'll really find. And he is very progressive with the passes he does receive.
Yeah. Moving on to the defensive numbers. Really strong. I think he's. You can see the sort of the smartness in him in the sort of the final third. The concerns, maybe not concerns. The looking at him from a sort of pressing or attacking as a form of defending perspective. Do you have any sort of concerns there?
No, I think like he's very willing to press markers, and again, he's got a really brilliant usage of his frame. Like he's 6'2", but he's very long legged. Like you'll find him go in to really nip tackles off players brilliantly. He's very smart and good at that. Again, the only thing is if you want him to make up ground, if you're being transitioned on, and you're running back to goal, again, he's gonna struggle in that 20-yard plus sprint in that role. But you keep the distances tight. He's actually really quite sharp in that aspect, and he's an aggressive player. He's not going to shirk out of a challenge, and he's going to get himself about. I just think that you need to keep the distances fairly compact for him. And again, he's not Jorginho. He's better than Jorginho quite a bit. But again, if you're transitioning on goal with 20 yards and you got to run the length of the pitch, that's not something that he'll be brilliant
at. Yeah, Ariel's one. There you go. And he's also brilliant. I think when we're watching the goals he scored with his head, the way he sort of peeled off the back of defenders, the way he found a bit of space in the box. It's not just the fact that he's 6'2" and he's got a frame on him. He's smart. He's smart with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and look, I like a lot of things about Mikel Merino. One thing that you'll find, and I'll maintain, the more that you watch Mikel Merino, I think the more that you like, and it's because he's a coach's dream. He follows instructions to a T. There's nothing flashy about it. He platforms other people in the team. He's not going to be the type of player that's going to be cute between the lines, at the top of the box. You're looking for a different profile in that sense. But what he is a true 6'8", that complements a lot of people. He makes a lot of underlapping runs. He will go outside and make selfish runs for his winger, and he will occupy those zones. And I think what's nice is he is pretty two-footed in the way that he receives. So those runs aren't entirely useless. He could whip in a good cross, but he doesn't do it too often. I would say Mikel Merino is the type of player that is going to keep things simple, keep things short. You're not looking at somebody that's got an excellent whipped cross. You're not looking at somebody that's got a huge switch on him. I mean, a lot of those things, actually, if you start to pair it with a Calafiori, you start to say,
Mm.
okay, there's something with that pod that starts to have a lot of compliments. So if Calafiori, who is a much more confident, brazen dribbler, you can really see how a Mikel Merino's kind of diligence and economy in the touch would pair really well with that, because you've got the runner and the brazen carrier and somebody that will make those runs, but then he can sit there and make some of the more cultured passes. He can understand the tempo, and he will help Gabriel Martinelli come inside, especially if you're looking for Calafiori to try to occupy wider zones. So you can see that working to an extent. The only thing I'll say is there is like an athletic limit on that left hand side. You've got Calafiore as well as Mikel Merino, who I think both struggle in the longer carries, who struggle in the 20-yard carry. And that would be the only concern from maybe an Arsenal standpoint. And
Mm.
you'd be asking a lot of Gabriel to defend the channels, but mate, we already do that. And we did that with Granit Xhaka. I don't think Granit Xhaka was somebody that, was elite at that longer run. So yeah, there's a lot to like about him. I think the deal makes more sense than maybe the player. It's not
Yeah.
elite as a player, but the
Yeah.
deal is somebody in the last year of his contract. He's got, I believe, a 65 million euro release clause. It won't be that because him being in the last year will be much cheaper. But you're starting to look at a lot of things and saying, okay, in building the summary, he's got a 7 out of 10 in terms of his passing. Not the elite pass that he's got every pass in his locker, but he makes brilliant passes, brilliant progression. He can shape well. He can brush the ball between the lines. He can receive brilliantly under pressure. He's got a good usage of his frame. Out of possession, he's diligent. He's not lazy. He goes to his marker. He wins a lot of tackles. He's got a really good frame to nip in. He's
Mm.
just not somebody that can carry longer distances. You won't see him being a carrier in midfield.
Yeah.
He will facilitate. And in terms of helping the build up in the first and second phase, he'll do that brilliantly. And he does have flexibility to anchor the midfield. He's not just an eight. In my opinion, he absolutely has the capacity to be a deep lying playmaker and anchor a midfield if we
Mm.
needed that.
Mm. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. You're never beating the North American allegations. You said Moreno a few too many times. You did correct it to
Yep,
Moreno in the end.
I'll get there.
We'll get there. Let's move forward to because I think I want to touch more on the sort of the deal side of things that you were alluding to there. Let's move forward to the tactics board, because what I liked as well about Marino when we were watching him was he was someone who's willing to sort of move outside and go into those wide areas and be someone who can go on the overlap and make this kind of unselfish runs. And I think there's a potential that Marino is, again, part of solving this. I don't think we're ever going to get a player who is totally solves this left-hand side issue. So maybe let's have a look at the tactics board and get into that.
Yeah, so I will slowly pull that up. He says should have been a little bit more on it, but yeah. Look, I think Mikel Merino again. It's somebody that is it's more enticing in terms of uh, the more you watch him, the more enticed you get. So um, as we go up, we're just going to build our typical 3-2-5. I've got kind of Ben White, Saliba, Gabriel that we all know and love. I've got Timber as our starting left back here. Calafiori coming in potentially. We can talk about that, but we'll just build the team as is, as we know. And Mikel Merino will be that kind of left eight in typical fashion. He'll slot in here, and I think one thing that you're going to find with Mikel Merino is I think with a Timber, it is a little bit more difficult because they want to do the same things, in midfield. So that could be a little bit of a redundancy there. You actually will probably need a Calafiori type to kind of operate a little bit on the outside if you want Martinelli to come in. And Mikel Merino can kind of be this player to kind of sit in the pocket, right? With your left back being a little bit wider. That's something that he'll probably do really well. But he is somebody that, again, can make that underlapping run for Martinelli. He is somebody that can receive in these pockets and really help facilitate play. One thing, again, is I do feel if we wanted to have a little bit more of a attacking kind of lineup, you can have a Mikel Merino be the person to kind of sit in deeper, and you can have a more attacking kind of eight up top. And I mean, you do have something where he can play that kind of inverted center back role if you wanted, or Declan could. It really could be either or. And he's happy to be on the right. He's not somebody that's only left left-sided biased. He could be on the right. It doesn't matter for him. But he's got that ability to offer that kind of flexibility as well, that he could be kind of also an inverted central center back. I probably wouldn't love that rotation too much, but he's got an ability to operate in a double pivot with Declan Rice. And you can have a more attacking 8 slot up. I think in all likelihood, what we will find with Mikel Merino is you're going to find this be the typical of what we'll see. And look, if you have Thomas Partey play again, that's an option. I think that's incredibly defensive,
Mm,
personally. Mikel
I do.
Merino is somebody that is more of that 6'8". You'd like to have somebody more offensive. So this wouldn't be a situation that I would see too often. It would be a case of Partey or Merino, not both together.
Mm.
So, um, so yeah, all in all, good player. I think that he carries a lot of qualities that we would like. I think this is probably the formation that you're looking to see more often than not.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, he's got a lot of good qualities.
So keep it up, just because a couple more things I wanted to talk about in the tactics board just before we close up on that. So three things really. Well, firstly, it was more of an observation, which is firstly we're building an absolute team of giants here. So
Yeah,
it's another 6'2" dude coming in and kind of solidifying this team. When you say Timber and Marino kind of want to do the same things, I'm interested in sort of exploring that. And sort of finally, do you see Marino in any way on the overlap? Do you think he can do that? Because like, we saw him
I
rotating
mean,
out there, but do you think that's a way of fixing this left hand side?
no, like he'll go out to place hold, but he can't make the run deep. That's where it falters because that's a very big run. Again, we talked about it before in the scouting. He's got that 10 to 15 yard run. So he's really smart and he'll make either an underlapping run to push, Martinelli inside. He will make that run. In terms of having Mikel Merino kind of travel on the outside and push Martinelli here while he goes on the outside to deliver across, that's not something that you're going to see. He's going to want to recycle at this point. And again, he hasn't really shown excellent crossing ability. Again, that I wouldn't call that something that he's great in. And that's why I think there's a redundancy with Timber, because Timber in these zones, he wants to underlap, right? He wants to receive and turn. He's got a little bit more aggressive intent than Merino. I think Merino is more of a safe passer than Timber. And so again, they carry a lot of the same benefits in terms of movement, in terms of maybe they're feeding between the lines.
Could we see a
Um,
flip? Marino deeper
sorry,
and Timber higher. Could we see a flip? Marino deeper and Timber higher.
you may, but again, it would carry similar redundancy. Like, I mean, Marino's very capable in the pivot, right? So that's not a question, and he's probably a little bit better deeper as well. But
Mm,
I think with Yuri and Timber, the benefit of having him as an 8 in those projections, by the way, is that he's got the 6'8" balance. You don't need two 6'8s down the
mm,
same side.
yeah,
Very much I would probably use one or the other, and I would probably prefer a case when we are a bit more adventurous to
yeah,
have something more between the lines.
yeah. But I think that kind of tempo setter from deep that isn't all on Rice, and then Rice can do the kind of
Yeah,
put the cape on and do the role that he does so well as a kind of all round. I think is nice and sort of takes that pressure off Rice a little bit. Yeah, it's interesting. I think it gives us a lot of flexibility. Let's move on to the deal.
and
Because
you know
this
what?
is
I'll quickly do it because there's going to be people yelling in the comments. Look, I know that we're probably going to sign. I don't knock on wood. Um, how it works, I think, with a Calafiore, you'll find this pod where I think when we've got the ball high up the pitch and if we hike everybody up, and Declan's playing here, you will find cases where Calafiore will be probably the more natural overlap, and you'll push Martinelli inside here, and you'll have Marino kind of be in this area. That is the more likely opportunity. You could see a case of basically Calafiore who will be start a little bit wide. Marino could make an underlapping run to push Martinelli inside and Calafiore stay deep. That is an option. Again, you're just struggling between these two, Calafiore and Moreno, to have somebody that's got that proper running power over 20 yards that can really make use of going to the byline deep and delivering across.
yeah, yeah, no, I
That's
see that.
something that you're going to be missing down that pod. But again, a lot of really positives in the deal. And I think you're looking at, Marino and kind of saying, listen, there's a lot of good here. I like you more because of the price. Again, I think between 25 to 30 million pounds is what you could expect to spend because he's in the last year of his contract. And there's a lot of Shaka-esque facilitation that you get with this type of player. But again, he doesn't solve the whole if you're looking for somebody in those high eight positions to be cute between the lines, to slip in a reverse pass. Um, I think that there's a lot to work with in terms of that pod. I think it's a very physical pod, and you really up the kind of
The,
physical presence.
the shortest player on the pitch there, not the heights, the whole
It's
thing, but the
Martinelli.
shortest player on the pitch there is 5'10".
Yeah,
It's really incredible.
it's a
Yeah,
tall side.
I think so. TNT Sports have said that Marino has a release clause of £52 million, supposedly saying that United were interested back in March. Interesting. I didn't know he spent a year on Newcastle. I didn't know that. Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because it does feel like an opportunity, and I will refer back to what the only thing we have to go off, which is what Mikel was saying sort of earlier in the summer. I think we said this on the scouting, and I do think it bears repeating. I think we're not going to sign two Mavericks. We're not going to sign two players. We're not going to sign. Let's get our let's fall asleep and maybe wake up after this. But we're not going to get Jamal Musiala and Rafa Leao. It's just not. I just can't see that happening. Two players who need a little bit more freedom to really show you what they can do. So I think if we basically the question is not only where do you want to spend the big money to go and get that Maverick. I think we both feel it's in the forward areas.
Yeah.
So if we're going to go and do that, then we do need a bit more sensibility, a little bit more maturity, a little bit more sort of security and knowledge of exactly what we're going to go and get every single time. I can't get out of my head. There was a Kieran Tierney interview that he did a couple of years ago when Mikel first came in. It was the first time I really was like, oh, that's interesting. He said Mikel's big on when you go out on the pitch, reducing the variables. Going, when he stands there, it's all the, the stuff that we all know by now that when he stands here, you do that. But also when the ball go, in a cross, here's exactly what I want you to do. From a throw in, here's exactly what I want you to do. It might seem too much, but it's about reducing the, and there's other schools of thought, right? But I think sort of Mikel and Pepper are similar schools of thought where they see football through problem solving. And if you reduce those problems and you basically create as few variables on a match day as you possibly can, that's important. And I just can't see him signing two players where he's going to give them that much freedom. So when, let's say in a scenario where we signed Rafa Leao, let's dream, Rafa Leao on the left-hand side, and that's what we went for, or an Osimhen. Actually, let's say Osimhen, right? I think Merino makes a lot of sense as a midfielder. He's in that sort of gap where he's a prime age midfielder, where he's, at 28 years old. We have a lot of players sort of in, sort of 25 and 30. The security that it gives us, the profile that you've outlined so brilliantly, I think this would make a lot of sense if we went and did that marquee deal in the forward line. That's really where I'm at with Merino.
I don't love him. I think that he's a 7 out of 10. He gives us a lot of things that the team lacks. He's at a price that I don't think makes you marquee. He's on something like 61K a week in euros, right? So he's on very reasonable wages. And I think he's the type of player that you're like, okay, I like it if you're buying me something shiny with it. And so for me, whether or not I want to say yes 100% to the deal or not, I think it depends on that.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I don't love about it is that down that left-hand side, we would be lacking a really strong presence on the byline in that pod with Calafiore as well as, Martinelli. And I think that limits us a little bit. I don't think it does help the left-hand side. It doesn't solve the left-hand side.
Yeah.
I think there will still be some issues.
And people might say, well, okay, we're going to get the fullback. But then you're going, okay, so it's not the left back or the left centre back. It's not your left mid. It's not your left winger. At some point, who is it?
And it will need something else. So look, I really like the deal. There's a lot of things to like about him. Am I shouting from the rooftops? No. I think he's very much a plan B signing, personally. Like, he strikes me, again, as an opportunity, and you can be like, okay, that's fine, but what else are you giving me? And I will judge him as a pairing of deals as opposed to him in isolation.
I agree. I agree. I completely agree. Let's do some questions. There's some interesting ones. We've had one from Matt says hello, says his name's Mikel, absolute no-brainer. Yellow Jello, I feel like we just answered your question, which was how would a Marino, Calafiori, Nelly left-hand side work? I think that's probably we've sort of come to that a little bit. Question from Arsene8998. Would he be more 6'8" or 8'6"? I suppose the question is primarily 8 or primarily 6.
Definitely 6'8" for me. Like he's played
Primarily
in the
6.
eight. Yes, because he's better in deeper buildup. Again, for me, an 8'6" is somebody that's much more cuter in the final third and in around the box. And
Yeah.
and yeah, so I think he's more of a 6'8"
Yeah.
profile.
Question from Gunas Sam. He says, "Look at the stats. He's not a great passer. Is this true?" I think looking at problem is
No,
what
this is
does
role.
but
This is
yeah,
role.
but it's also what does great passer mean? Over 10, 15 yards? Are you saying long passing? Are you saying picking a lock on the edge of the box? Are you saying from deep? Are you like what are you asking for? I think if you're looking for a 10 to 15 yard progress, knit things together, maybe not quite as cute knocking things around corners like Xhaka, but in terms of the usage of his body and the usage of the ball, I really like. So it's that kind of passer. Is that what we want? That's the next question.
Yeah, I mean he's not again, he's a 7 out of 10. Like if you're talking about short and medium range passing, his bravery and build up, it's brilliant. He's really going to help solve that. He's never under pressure and he's got that Carrick ability of understanding tempo. Like he'll be a brilliant at that. Now,
Yeah.
do you want somebody who can switch the ball as well 20, 30 yards? He's not Calafiori from deep, for example. And that's why I think that you can build a pod that solves that. Calafiori could give you the long, deep passing. Mikel Merino is the type of guy that will progress you from the middle third to the final third, and you've got your Martinelli there to really finish accidents. Like it is a pod that makes sense. But as a player, yeah, I don't think that he's got the cute reverse ball when, at the edge of the box. He's not, I think he's got a pretty good half space cross, by the way. But again, I don't think he's got the longer range directed, really dangerous whipped balls. He's not got that. He very much is a case. Mikel Merino doesn't hold on to the ball for longer than 3 seconds. In every clip that you're going to watch of him, this is a player that gets it, gets rid of it, gets it, recycles. He isn't somebody that the team builds around. He comes in, helps, knits things together, leaves.
Yeah.
And that's what he is.
But as you said, last year we probably win the league if Xhaka and Rice are around. So is that
There's
a
ways
question
to
mark?
win with this type of player.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't think
100%.
it's my primary and it's not my first choice. And I have to be honest with that. But I think the deal is very good. Is he worth 30 million pounds? Without a shadow of a doubt. You're getting a cheap deal if you're able to work around 25 to 30 million pounds. If we start talking anything more than that, because I view it as depth and an alternate option, I don't view this type of signing as changing our life in midfield. And I don't think people should
No.
if we do go for it.
Question from Kieran4215. It says, would he work in the Premier League given he was once at Newcastle and I'm not sure how well he played for them? I think that was 2017-18, so we've moved on a little bit since then. But I do have some concerns about his stamina. Sort of to the adaptation. He's been in La Liga a long time. I think it would be a concern. But again, as you was just sort of alluding to, he's not coming in to solve all of our world issues. I think he would be coming in as another midfield option if we weren't to go and spend that sort of superstar, let's say, level money in the midfield. I think he's another good option, which means he doesn't have to play every single game.
The one thing that I'll say, and I don't want to keep liking the targets that I like, but you put him in the Yusuf Fofana category of opportunity. And both are in the last year of their contract. Both are slightly different. Both are 6'8". I have a preference to a Yusuf Fofana because of the physical edge to it. But I mean, Yusuf Fofana is pretty average in the air. Mikel Merino is incredible in the air. He's a much better passer. He's a much better deep build-up player. He's a Michael Carrick type, whereas Fofana is going to be more in the Partey mold. That's incredibly vertical, maybe too vertical. And you've got two people maybe at opposite ends of the spectrum, one more of a controller and one more of a punchy 8-ish. I would argue Fofana is more 8'6" than he is 6'8". Ultimately, if you really wanted somebody that was cute between the lines, right? Like, so from me to get off the fence, and I'll always give you my opinion, I think he's a 7 out of 10 player. I could look at it and understand how, in the context of him plus another, it makes sense. I'm not loving him. I'm not shouting him from the hills, but a very competent plan B that gives us a lot of things that we do miss. And he is a unique profile that we don't have. So, uh, and from an age perspective, people are poo pooing. He's 28 years old. We have a really young midfield. I don't think that's as much of an issue as what people may think, especially with Partey and Jorginho having no longer than a year of a shelf life left in this team.
Uh,
Uh,
and with
could be
and with
looking towards that.
and with supposedly Ethan and Miles being, the guys to break through at the academy, so I
Yeah.
think there's something there. Final question from Tim Campbell VO says, just please make sure George only uses monosyllabic words like the, and ball, so everyone can understand. Only phrases like he kick ball and he score goal. After someone accused you of
Touche.
making up words like reliability. Let's move past that and move forward. Yes, thank you guys so much for being here. Really appreciate it. As we mentioned, we did a whole hour looking at clips. You can go sort of check out everything we were just talking about, which you can check out on Patreon. I'm away next week, so you'll have someone else new on Scouted. How excited! And George can pick who it is. I think we should probably do it. I think we said on the scouting as well. We should probably do a goalkeeper, get a goalkeeper expert on, because that'd be really, really cool. Yeah, pleasure as always. Mikel Merino, or Moreno, whatever his name is. Thanks for watching, and thanks for keeping it Arsenal.
Peace.